Hello and welcome back to the China Day 2021. My name is Miriam. I'm one of the co-founders of Dongxi, the China Opportunity. We are analysts for Chinese growth stocks and observers of China's digital ecosystem. We create a lot of content that explains digital China to you. So maybe you want to check out our YouTube channel. Today, I'm very, very humbled to be invited to moderate the digital panel of today's session under the topic Digitalization as a driver for the future of Sino-German economic cooperation, prospects and trends. Digitalization and globalization have profoundly changed entrepreneurial practice in recent decades. Today, modern information technologies and the digitalization of business and production processes contribute greatly to remaining competitive. Now, data security is and remains one of the most important entrepreneurial challenges. So how companies actually operate under the given framework conditions and what impulses Chinese and German companies are setting internationally in the digital field will be the topic of today's discussion. Now, let me welcome and introduce our panelists of today's session. First, I want to start with Andreas Hugo, who is Global Vice President and Head of the China Liaison Office at SAP. Andreas has a very, very long legacy at SAP and also a very, very long legacy in China. So there's no need to talk about years, actually. For me, he's also the central figure of the German-Chinese China community here in Berlin and all over Germany. And as I just learned, privately, Andreas is also a passionate master of virtual reality. Then I would like to invite David Wong. He's Chief Representative of Huawei Deutschland, of Huawei Germany. David joined Huawei in '98 already. He has worked in China, Singapore, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Australia. In 2005, David was appointed as CEO of Huawei United Arab Emirates. In 2018, he came to Huawei Germany as a deputy CEO. And in 2019, he was appointed as chief representative of Huawei Berlin office. David, for me, is really an inspiring figure. And believe me when I say you can write down every word that he says, because he has a great talent to systemize complex issues and make them very comprehensible and understandable. Next up, let me introduce you to Mr. Hui Chang. He's the vice president of the NEO Group. Mr. Chang studied in Beijing, but also in Pforzheim and Utah. He held several positions as a general manager. And even if we haven't met in person yet, I have really, really high expectations, as my co-founder Marcel always calls him the coolest Chinese in Germany. So we will see if he can live up to this. For those who don't know NEO, maybe you want to check out our YouTube channel, Dongxi the China Opportunity, because NEO is the biggest challenger of global automotive OEMs. In China, actually, NEO sells more EVs than Daimler already. They just launched in Europe, in Norway, in May this year. They will open the first NEO house later this month in Oslo, I believe on the 23rd. And they will install battery swap stations in 5 cities of Norway. Next up will be the rollout in Germany next year, which is a big milestone. And recently, they've been covered in the media a lot because of the use of commercial robo-taxis. So as you might know, German legislation has pioneered in this field, and together with the Intel company Mobileye and 6 autonomous robo-taxis will be tested in Munich starting next year, and NEO will provide the cars for this. Last but not least, let me welcome to the stage Martin Schmoll. He's the director of TD Reply. He drives data-driven business innovation at TD Reply, and they are offering tech and consulting solutions at the intersection of data ecosystems, advanced analytics, and strategic planning. TD Reply is drives a data-driven approach and helps to make businesses more customer-centric. Utilizing the latest in social listening, AI, and natural language processing technology, TD's data products can provide businesses with a clear picture of current market demands and consumer insights in China and around the world. Apparently, we met a couple of years ago in Beijing over some beers. I don't remember entirely, which probably means that it was a great Beijing night. So today's topic is rather complex, so we decided to divide it into 3 subtopics, and I would like to start with the crisis as an opportunity. So let's talk about cooperation in digitalization of businesses and production processes. Maybe we can start with you, David Wong, from Huawei. I would like to ask you, Huawei has a long history with Germany. So what is your Chinese perspective on Germany, and where do you see potential for cooperation and development in the digitalization of businesses and also production processes?
Thank you very much, Mariam. It's my great honor again being here. So Germany plays the most important role in Huawei's global business. During the past 20 years, you can see that it's our customer who were driving Huawei moving forward. As you know, it's not easy to satisfy German customer, but their requirements are pushing us getting better and better. It's not only from the technology leadership part, but also comprehensive management and maturity. For example, from decade ago, our customer put the request of sustainable development management requirement to us. So besides this business-wise, Germany as a market, but also Germany is one of our R&D investment destination. We have the largest overseas R&D center in Munich that plays a very important role in Huawei's global picture. They have more than 450 R&D engineers, and German is also Huawei's supply chain. So during past years, we purchased a dozen of billion as a component from Germany, and our R&D investment here every year more than $100 million R&D investment in Germany. So that's what's the past. And if we're looking forward for the futures, that we believe Germany even play a more important role. For example, now everybody is familiar with 5G. Actually, scientists are working on the 6G. In the first 5 generation from 1 to 5 is very much telco oriented. But in the 6G, that gravity might move from telecom to the manufacturing industries. So 6G need to serve a broader requirement rather than consumers. So Germany has a very strong manufacturing base and history. So we see that a great opportunity that Huawei's technology could support Germany keep and enhance the global leadership on these key technologies. And also, for example, another areas in the SME. We know SME played a very important role in the society and the community. They contribute more than 50% of the job. They are every corner of the communities. However, it's very struggling for SME to digital themselves. While we just set up a small office in Saarland, this office is targeting to support SME to do a successful digital transformation by offering Huawei's technology, for example, data management, algorithm, or broadband connections. So we hope by this effort, we could have a long-term win-win situation in Germany with our stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. Mr. Chang, welcome to this panel as well. NIO is already a global and digital company, as we all know. And like your founder, William Lee, said in an interview with Handelsblatt, it was, I believe, recently, NIO offers a global product, not a purely Chinese one. It's not a secret that I personally also bought NIO shares a long time ago, so I have a personal interest here. And I'm happy to see the strong partnerships that NIO has with German suppliers, like, for example, Bosch and Infineon or Continental. But also at the same time, this means a global supply chain comes with challenges. As, for example, right now, the global chip shortage shows. And I'm wondering, Mr. Chang, how do you manage these global supply chains?
Thanks for the question, and also the good point. As you mentioned, first of all, NIO is a very global startup, and secondly, 70% our partnership in the supply chain are international companies, like you named 2 or 3 from the Germany. And thirdly, regarding the chip shortage, I think actually we have started already back last year. And what we try to manage from the very beginning to establish our global supply chain is the following. So first of all, we try to work with our partner with the local production as much as possible. For the parts, they're going to deliver. And secondly, we're trying to identify the crisis or any of the upcoming issues as early as possible through different communication channels, including the supply chain team embedded in Munich here, so that we can talk to companies like Bosch, Continental, ThyssenKrupp, Webasto, you name it, early enough with their project or program management team to jointly identify any of the risk factors early enough. And thirdly, I think we try to build up a very solid partnership from the very beginning instead of just a regular customer and the supplier relationship, so that we make sure that we will make a backup during the good time and the bad times. So I think that is some of the factor really have an impact on our supply chain, or in other words, what is beneficial for the new supply chain.
Great, thank you very much. I would like to move on actually to the second part of the conversation. The topic should be about cooperation on new business models. And here we try to focus on the future and the challenges and opportunities in the future. And Mr. Zhang, one aspect that convinced me about NIO in the first place was NIO's business model. And the idea of the company being a user company. So in other words, a user centricity is automatically in the DNA of NIO. So what will NIO do, as you're launching in Europe right now and also next year in Germany, for the European customers? So what will you do about the customer journey? What can we expect from the NIO houses, the whole NIO experience?
I would step back first to explain a little bit of the ecosystem, what we are operating in China, before I come to the question how we will do in Europe or in European market. So basically, as you mentioned, our mission is building up a user enterprise. And there's 5 pillars, basically, with a user so-called centric. And the first one is our product. So we are one of the earliest smart EV producer offering the full all-stack photo technology. And we have NOMI, the first AI devices in car, and of course our other mechanic performance of the vehicle. And also, even today, you can speak to NOMI and telling NIO through NOMI any of your complaints or suggestions regarding the vehicle, which will be forwarded in the back-end system, on which we can react very quickly to our user. And the second column is our comprehensive power solution. So as everybody knows, a power swap station with all the other possibilities. And the third one is our after-sales network, in which includes both NIO self-invested, operated service center, but also with our service partner together. And the next one is our point of sales, where we will deal direct contact to our user, as you name it, NIO house or NIO space. And the last column is, we call it a NIO community, including our NIO self-produced NIO radio, our NIO live merchandising division, our NIO day, NIO summer, CIS talk, like a text talk, and also basically NIO user trust fund. And on the bottom is the NIO app and the NIO clouds. So this is basically the ecosystem. So principally, we won't do anything else in European market compared to the Chinese market. But we are fully aware European market is actually not a single market. Instead, it's 27 different countries after Brexit. So if you add on England and Norway and Switzerland, there's 30 countries with different languages and cultures. So we probably need to vary a little bit. But at the end, to your question, what you can expect as a European customer, I would say still with mission, the user enterprise, and you still can expect you can swap your battery, and you can still expect you will have the new house and the new community.
Okay, great, thanks. So what I am looking forward to then will be the neo pretzel and maybe the neo croissant and maybe also some German neo beer. That would be nice, or some neo pizza. We'll see what the future brings. So we know from the history and what we've seen with Chinese companies in the recent years, we see that they have acknowledged the value of user-centric and data-driven business models. In fact, if we take the application of AI as an example, what we see in China is that almost a third of all Chinese companies is already successfully deploying AI to increase their revenues. In the US, this is merely 13% of all the companies. And according to Bitkom in Germany, this is just about 6% of the companies that are using AI in Germany. Only 1 in 5 companies is already planning to use AI, or at least discussing it for that matter. And at the same time, it is 73% of companies who consider AI to be the most important technology of the future. So this is the cue for Martin here, Martin Schmoll. Welcome to the panel as well. Martin, you're an expert in data modeling, user insight, and strategy. So what we both learned from our work and cooperating with Chinese ventures in China is their unconditional, brutal customer centricity and data-driven service design. So my question to you is, why are German companies not fighting for the user data yet?
Thank you very much for the question, and thanks for having me today. I think German companies are kind of fighting, but maybe for the user data, but with the whole ecosystem about getting user data. I think the hands are a bit tied because the ecosystem that we see here in Germany is mainly governed by GAFA, the Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Alphabet here that we see, and Amazon. Sorry, I mentioned Amazon, right? And they provided quite strong walled gardens for their data and for their services. But there's a big shift about to happen. So the cookie world, I think everyone knows, third-party cookies to track interactions throughout the internet, throughout different websites is kind of changing a lot. Privacy is getting more important. And this is something that we see in Germany as big driver for actually companies to hunt more for their first party data, collecting their own data about their industry, about their brand, about their consumers. When we look into China, this is like a very big difference here because the ecosystem is very unique there. Not talking about the different companies and players there, but the way the life there is digitized in China is just much more broad, and also the ecosystem is much more connected. We're looking into BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and also like companies like Huawei, Xiaomi, they all do have quite a wide access to digitized business services, and therefore are able to collect a lot of data. And we don't really see these kind of things in Germany, I would say. So the access to data, user data, consumer data, which is basically the source for successful AI applications, I think explains a bit why the AI application in Germany is quite challenging, and people also see a challenge in actually getting access to this data because it's like a quite strong walled garden that we see here. But what we see, there's actually tremendous value in there. And it's important to understand these consumer needs very fast. So to build that data mindset about like what is possible and what is feasible. And I do think when consulting our clients at TD, it is really always eye-opening to look over the pond, you used to say back then, but now to look very far east and bring in some of our best cases that we do have with our Chinese companies and also in the Chinese market of our international companies. It is always a challenge for us initially to have like this relevant value of data to be shown for our customers that have not so much experience working with data. But once they're onto that, it is usually quite a treasure trove of value, even though there's like quite some high starting effort sometimes. The key thing that we actually see in our business, especially in Germany here, is that the existing data is underutilized. So what we mean by that is that there's quite a strong hype around data utilization, about AI, and everything should happen automatically. But quite often we can use existing data, example from social media, we call social listening, or also search data, to make up a lot of interesting insights and to create a lot of advanced measurement construct around business relevant topics and questions. So we do see a lot of value in looking into search data, for example, to understand consumer interest in different topics. We'll see a lot of value into really building up complex measurement constructs around a brand, around products, in social media conversations across vast trove of different kind of sources to understand how consumers perceive a product, a brand, certain events, product launches, certain product features, designs, you name it. You can basically look into many of these kind of things and set a relative understanding of certain products and brands, but also about the competitive landscape. And really here, the secret sauce, I would say, that is bringing the value to data are these advanced measurement constructs, how to decode the data, as well as the advanced analytics that kind of links to AI. And I think this is really important, that this mindset is growing stronger and stronger in Germany with more successful cases that we see. The great thing is that we see in China, there's much more openness, much more pull for these kind of insights and these kind of solutions. And we help the German markets here and the German users that cooperate with us on the Chinese topics to see that value quite clearly.
On that note, it would be really interesting if you could give us some tips or some insights about how new customer journeys that are built around a customer-centric business model can be implemented in the future from a German perspective. Maybe you have a few examples or tips that you could share with us?
Yes, very much. I think that to really provide customer-centric business, there needs to be three key components. And there's obviously the first one is understanding the customer, and that means that you need to find an unbiased way to listening to your consumers and customers about various kind of topics around your business, and be able to do that at scale. Because currently what we are able to do quite often with traditional market research is to get like a research environment, talking to people in focus groups, doing like surveys. But this is all very much in a controlled environment and not really what people actually would say if they're, without any kind of bias there. So using social listening and search data is really helpful to circumvent that bias and scale it up to really have several millions of discussions and mentions around certain topics that we can leverage to have that unbiased listening at scale. The second component quite often is also like the digital dynamic products. So listening is on the side of understanding, but you need also to have that dynamicism in the products to actually bring the tailor-made insights and solutions and services, and therefore the value to the consumer. And when we look into digital, we do not just mean traditional digital like media, like websites or digital products that we build and software, but also things that go onto the physical layer on top. When we look into modern cars, for example, at also in the panel here today, NIO, the digital layer and the service around the actual physical product is very, very strong. And also that gives a very strong dynamicism to the interaction with the consumer, and you're able to experiment, to react faster. And so my head already jumped ahead. The third and last component I think is very important is experimentation. To be able to trial different kind of messages and different kind of services with consumers. Because today the expectations, I think also as Mr. Wang mentioned, not just in Germany, but also in other markets, especially also in China, they develop rapidly and they also grow quite strongly and very fast. So experimentation helps us to really find the sweet spot of the consumer's needs and expectations towards different aspects of our products and services. So the usual things that we do here is continuous business monitoring. So to always keep an eye on what's actually going on around the brands, around certain industries, around our clients, and to build a connected infrastructure through that kind of the insights that we gain here. So the important aspect is that there shouldn't be any silos much about information. There needs to be transparency, and you have dynamic value chain to be able to actually exchange these insights and react fast onto very fastly changing consumers. And I think that's something that China taught us very well, that the speed of adaptation and development of new needs is something that we'll see not just in China, but also that's exporting, so to say, with digitalization. So maybe let me bring in two examples here of clear trends that we're able to identify. When looking at the automotive market, for example, the customer centricity there is quite strongly seen by an overall trend where we see that national brands, like Chinese national brands in China, they have a very steady increase of consumer interest measured by search volume by 3% points every year. So that makes a very big difference when you look into a trend of like what brands are relevant and actually talk in the right manner to the consumer and also provide the right value here. And the interesting thing is also like this very local advantage that many local brands do have in China played out very strongly during COVID times. Local brands hit a really nice sweet spot here by engaging consumers, for example, through live streaming during the lockdown to actually engage them quite strongly. And the brand that probably is not too familiar here, but we saw in our data really sparking out is Jetour or Jietu from Cherry Automotive. And they generated actually as much search and consumer interest as Volkswagen during the lockdown period through their really strong engagement here. Another very local example as well is what we identified is Geely, that were very fast and reactive to the whole trend of the COVID virus. And they reutilized their air filters that they promote to be like the air pollution filtering CN 9.5 level to be also applicable and helpful against the virus. So they were able to really quickly change their narrative and use their existing products to generates a lot of buzz around their communication here. And this is really, really important to understand and see what actually works in terms of communication, what meets the user, and what kind of other things that are perceived more as a negative sentiment. So with these kind of insights, actually, we can answer really relevant business questions through publicly available data from search and social listening mostly.
Great, Martin. Thank you very much. I think these were some really interesting examples. And in general, I always think when it comes to user centricity, and that's why we also have Huawei and NIO on board here at the panel today, and of course, SAP, we can learn a lot from China. So David, we've learned now from Martin how important it is to actually design data-driven business models. And my question to you is, how can we get data-driven business innovation started in Germany? Where do you see potential in Germany, because you're working so closely with the German SMEs?
Well, Mariam, it's a very good question. There is opinion that there are two major driven powers are moving innovation forward. One is scientific breakthrough, either from science theory or new material. The others is market demand. These two powers are moving this innovation forward. Germany is very famous for dozens of these high quality university, and German's doctor degree is the most difficult one to get. So Germany has a very comprehensive and deep this knowledge base and talent pool. China got a huge market, and the other panelists also mentioned how dynamic in China the market demand for digital service and the response from these potential consumers. I think that is a perfect combination that if Germans scientific research talent and the Chinese market could connect to each other closely, I think that will create a lot of great app service or the other type of business models, which will bring benefit to everybody. And Huawei, as one of the big Chinese company who run business in Germany for 20 years, has a broad engagement with different stakeholders. We are very happy to be this bridge between Germany community and the Chinese market. So we're happy to participate in different kind of discussion, initiations, and we're happy to support any programs. So to answer your question, I see the great potential from two sides and even more bigger potential values for further cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a really interesting thought. So Huawei is bringing this long history of a Chinese company being in Germany, being in Europe to the table, and SAP brings the other side. So SAP has a really long history with China as well, which is why I would like to ask you, Andreas, when we take the classical two areas of Sino-German cooperation, which is automotive and sustainability, where is SAP driving new business model innovations between China and Germany?
Yeah, thank you very much, Miriam, for this very good question. As you correctly said, I mean, we at SAP are actually more than 26 years already in China, active there, and really see also not only China as a market, but very much also as a place for innovation. And when I talk about innovation, it's very much about co-innovation. So working with our Chinese customers and partners in China for solutions in China and the whole world was always very much key. And I'm very happy for sure to see many of our partners and customers here with us on the panel. You mentioned two areas, and I think these are two industry areas, basically, or focus areas, which are indeed very key to our also global strategy. One is basically the whole, how to say, ecological aspect, where we see also both governments very much focusing on with green development, carbon neutrality. We actually created an initiative called Climate 21, where we actually address this topic across the company with our customers and partners together. How can we reduce the the carbon impact basically? And the other what you just mentioned in terms of the automotive industry is closely related to this. Is basically how can we, in this very key industries, basically for both countries, basically can reduce the carbon footprint basically, and overall improve efficiency, and also looking at the current challenges we are having. So basically, if you see, and it was mentioned by other panelists before, the challenges what we see and which are being addressed by digitalization in terms of supply chain management, in terms of how far can we ensure continuity in the supply chain. We actually initiated a project called Catena X, which basically addresses the idea of a new automotive ecosystem. And I think ecosystem is anyhow the keyword which we heard to many other panelists as well. We want to create ecosystems on the one side, basically in this very specific example called Catena X in the automotive industry, where we very much look into the whole value chain of the automotive industry, not only the classical view, but basically including the major initial players like BMW, Volkswagen, or Bosch, but also other players which you most likely would not see immediately there, like, for example, BASF playing out the key part here, and as well as we mentioned earlier in a different context, also small and medium-sized enterprises. So this community, this ecosystem is very much looking into creating standardized flow and secure flow of data to basically, through this, give a competitive edge to the participants. And we just launched it last year, and we already got a lot of interest from the Chinese side as well. So I'm very much looking forward to see how we can actually next step also potentially include Chinese partners here in Germany or even overseas.
Thank you very much, Andreas. So what I take away from this is the cooperation and the whole ecosystem, and the platform thought itself becomes a business model innovation. And I would like to take this thought back to Mr. Zhang, because NEO is innovating at all areas of their business model. And I would like to dive deeper on one specific area, which is solving a user problem that has been very, very famous in the EV sphere, which is the battery swapping. So I was wondering, Mr. Zhang, what is the roadmap for the rollout of the swapping stations in Europe?
Yes, thank you for that. The battery swap station is really a USP of NEO. NEO is still worldwide the only passenger vehicle companies providing a battery swap solution to the users. And we have installed until end of August over 427 battery swap stations already in China. And we will install until end of 2025 more than 4,000 battery swap stations, including China and the overseas market. And in overseas, we should install about 1,000 battery swap stations, including definitely the market where we're going to enter just very soon in Norway first. And as you mentioned, also next year in Q4 into the German market.
So following up on this, the KPI of the 1,000, by when is this due?
You mean the KPI is to install the battery swap station?
Exactly.
Yeah, as I said, our target is until 2025, 4,000 worldwide, including 1,000 overseas. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Sorry, I cannot give you exactly the number. How many will be in Munich, in Berlin, or in Dublin, or Paris? It all depends on the individual market demands and our strategy. But overall, we will bring the technology and also this convenience to the user in Europe.
Yes, that's, I think, super exciting, really. I know in China, this development is pretty much supported by the government. It's on the national agenda. So it will become a standard. That's pretty clear. However, in Europe, it's not yet part of the standard portfolio. It's actually a new solution. So I'm wondering, do you bet on any cooperations that you would like to have or to plan in the future to leverage this technology so it can become mainstream and can become a standard here?
That's good. You asked the question because it's exactly actually what we are looking for here to enter the European market. In fact, we will wish, first of all, a regulatory framework in the European continent. It doesn't matter from the Brussels European Union level or on the federal level in Germany, for example, to enable us and allow us to have a battery swap station technology, and together with another business model we call BaaS, battery as a service. On the other hand, we definitely need the private sector, like industry, who want to work with us to implement the battery swap station. I can say like all the energy companies, including the energy generation company, but also the grid company who can work with us, because one of the big benefits from the battery swap is the energy storage and the so-called vehicle to grid services. So for which we definitely need a strong partner from the energy industry. And the third one is definitely also some of the partner who can offer NEO where we can put and build up our battery swap station. I mean, if I can say, there's some other type of the companies who could be our partner and to work together. And we are very open in terms of the business model, how we should do. But we have actually only one goal, is to make that happen in order to make a very free usage for our user, so that we can together make the electrification and the EV more popular on the market.
Thank you very much. So for the viewers out there, this was an invitation to get in touch with Neo if you have a free space to put a swapping station there.
Thank you for making that announced.
Let's move on to the third part of the discussion, which is data security. So the data security law and the data protection is a huge topic in the bilateral cooperation and has always been. However, there was a huge wave of new IT laws in China, which seems to have no end. To just give you a quick overview, so in February, we had the anti-monopoly rules targeting the tech giants. These rules are prohibiting technologies and the usage of data and algorithms to manipulate the market. Then in August, just now, we had rules to stop unfair internet competition. So this set of rules says that internet platforms should not use data and algorithms to influence the user's choices. And then we had another update of the Personal Information Protection Law, the so-called PIPL. This is a comprehensive set of rules around data collection, processing, and protection of data. And it comes with strict limitations for transferring Chinese citizens' data outside of the country. And then in September, just now, we had the data security law, the DSL, come into force. And this is a law that basically says international companies must localize their data, and generated data will be kept in China and is subject to supervision by the relevant cyber data regulator in China. So if your head is spinning now, imagine what this makes to all the companies that are already in China and companies that want to go to China. So these, what we call extraterritorial effects, are hence increasingly affecting the companies outside of China and raising issues, or let's say concerns, for foreign companies who want to go into China. And therefore my question to Andreas, because he's working with a lot of these companies who are working between countries, what does that mean for implementation at the company level, and how does this affect the general IT strategy or setup between the countries?
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. It's definitely a very key questions for many companies, even also for SAP, who are actually operating globally. And I don't want to comment on any kind of geopolitical implications, but we have to address is that those trends definitely are impacting overall global strategies for companies, be it from an innovation perspective or be it from a sales basic or market perspective. I think the data security law, which you mentioned last, is actually it's a much broader, basically, coverage, I would say, than like you mentioned earlier, the cybersecurity law. So it's definitely impacting the companies, and it's going much deeper, as you mentioned, also many areas, many more stakeholders in this space. And companies really need to understand, first of all, what are the implications here, and which are for sure, it all is generally is already hard to understand. But overall, it's important that you have to balance to really see how do you want to approach this issue. So basically, the question is, are you, for example, going for a very conservative compliance approach, that you really even go so far that you go away from when you talk about a global IT strategy, maybe even go part away from this, that you basically start with separate systems, build basically independent system up, for example, in the HR area, a system in China, and then basically for the rest of the world. That's definitely a challenge, but basically this is something which companies and customers do approach it from this way, and to make very much sure that they're compliant. On the other side, basically, I think it's important that even if you don't want to take this conservative approach and still, try to maintain a more centralized data management system approach, you need to very much develop processes and tools which basically allow you to, minimize the risk if things get implemented, and basically also in this way, evaluate the cost related to those changes. So basically, I would say, just in summary, it's definitely a complex, it's a very complex matter for companies. And we are right now also advising many companies to work for sure with with suppliers of solutions like us, to really see where can we help, where we can evaluate risk, and where we basically can mitigate risk in terms of to make sure that you're staying fully compliant with the new regulations. And honestly speaking, I think we will see more development, not only in China, but also overall, which potentially gives even challenges more on a global level, not just related to China.
Thank you very much. Maybe from the other way around, looking at Huawei, I know that Huawei is asking for common guidelines and cooperation. This is something that I remember Huawei has always been supporting and asking for. So coherent guidelines to comply with and an industry-wide collaboration. So David, maybe you can also comment on this, what shall I call regulation chaos?
Well, even though Huawei's business was not much really related to this data management, but the debate about Huawei in Germany and worldwide during past 3 years about the trustworthy of critical infrastructure is similar to the kind of debate on the regulation over the data and the privacy. Huawei's position is we welcome such kind of regulation. Because now digitalization are moving much faster than the regulation and the criteria. So the industry itself running too fast and the regulation falling behind. That gap is where people's concern from. That gap is where the risks are from. So we see the effort either in the parliament in Germany or the related committee in China. I appreciate their efforts to have a law is better than no law to regulate such an important matter, either for infrastructure and the data and the privacy. And by saying that, we still that as the industry players try to work with the broader stakeholders to make the law and regulation as reasonable as possible. On one hand, we need to give the protection to the both infrastructure and data and the privacy. On the other hand, we need to consider efficiency because the efficiency also the customer's interest. Security is their interest, that efficiency is also their interest. So from the data and the privacy wide, I didn't see any regulation stop that have been transferred, but the transfer across the board data need to be under regulation. I think that is on behalf of all these consumers pursue and also is their interest. So basically, Huawei supported very much international collaboration on such kind of regulation and criteria. If China and Europe carry the same criteria, similar policy on this trustworthy of the critical infrastructure and also the data and the privacy transferation, that would both the benefit of Huawei and SAP, such kind of company, and innovation would be encouraged, less concern from the investors. So we hope the political leader would have more wisdom to find a better solution than cutting off supply chain or build up a little yard, have fence. We strongly believe there are much more better solutions than decoupling or build up a wall between each other. Digital world was born as a global corporate business. So cutting off connection between major community, I don't see it will last long. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Actually, this would be a perfect closing, but nonetheless, I want to ask one last question to all of you, and I would ask you to answer real quick, and maybe not even so seriously. Which is harder to comply to, German law or Chinese law? Maybe starting with Martin.
Yes, I think it ties in very nicely to what has just been said. I think there needs to be a balance actually to be made. I think in China currently, as GDPR is already a few years back, there's a bit more of uncertainty of what actually this law means and how these laws actually apply in different regions and different kind of cases. But I think the key question actually is not how hard it is, but actually more of what is the value. And I think VSTD, for example, support very strongly as well to protect privacy and create security around data, which is super important, but also should not stifle the growth and the economic development, especially in a globalized society. So I think the hardest part is that specifically.
Thank you very much. What about you, Mr. Chang? What do you think? Is it harder to comply to German law or Chinese law?
Oh, I think NIO try to be compliant everywhere in China, and of course also prepared for enter the European market. And I agree with what Martin said. I personal view, I see this is a part of the development process that in years that the whole world will find a common solution to accommodate more freely, but also compliant data exchange and the flows. Otherwise, we will kill ourselves because we are already in the middle of a quick age with a digital and a lot of data exchange.
Thank you. Andreas, what is your point on that?
Yeah, in addition to what my dear other panelists said, I think it's key that whatever regulation and law there's always a chance for engaging. And I have to say, this is basically maybe also called the companies and association. We are really also in China, we're participating in many of the discussions. And I think it's important overall, it's everywhere on every level to continue a very constructive and open dialogue on those topics and basically make sure that those people who basically are in charge of the decisions in the end basically understand the implications and the impact of the decisions basically they're doing. And so in this way, we actually have on both sides, in Germany and also in China, actually good experience in terms of feeling a certain level of involvement in those discussions and basically being able to make sure that those laws applied basically in the end, how to say, reflect also our concerns and needs, so to say.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Your last point on that, David?
Well, it's not easy to fulfill this obligation in both China and Germany. That need great effort from every organization who is involved in this business, and also that need continuous effort from management, from entire organizations. I think we are stepping into the new digital world. Every new digital citizen need to get used to this new environment. So if we are still trying to use the last century's law to manage 21st century's issues, that is not the case. So everybody is at this learning curve, try to adopt the new environment and try to cope with the new environment more harmoniously. So that's why we put a great effort on this side. Wherever we run business, we look at the local regulation carefully. We respect the local regulation and adjust ourselves to not only to be a compliance, but also involved into the discussion to continue optimize it to make it better and better, as what Andreas mentioned. Yeah.
So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Andreas. Thank you very much, Martin, David, and Mr. Chang for joining me on this panel and for so openly sharing your thoughts and insights on this difficult topic. Thank you very much. We will now go to the closing remarks by the president of the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Germany, Mr. Cheng Donglin. Bye-bye.